We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Yo guys! This is part 10 of What If Naruto was sent to another dimension. A different custom. A different language. A different time. A different dimension. Damn it Kakashi, where the hell did your Kamui send me? Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 23. I really need a nap after this. The stray thought entered Naruto's mind as he shot over the land of Fiori. The council building was still a while away, but with the frequency he was traveling to it, he could almost make the trip in his sleep. The bulk of Urza's close friend still resting over his shoulder didn't really help with conserving energy either. All these trips were taking their toll on even his immense reserves. He had left the tower nearly 20 minutes ago, and from the pace he was reduced to, it was still another half an hour at least till he made it there. A small amount of indecision had formed in his mind during the flight due to this. He highly doubted whoever the underling was would still be there when he arrived, so it was almost worth him staying back with Natsu and Urza to make sure they got home safely. The cranky old bats that made up the Wizard Council needed to be checked on though. Naruto was also particularly keen to see if Altair was okay. He really hoped nothing had happened to her. Shrugging the uncertainty to the back of his mind, Naruto readjusted Simon and lowered his flight path a little closer to the ground. This would be tricky, but it should be possible. Bringing his hands up into a messy cross, Naruto focused and a clone suddenly dropped to the ground in a puff of smoke. It rolled several times before skidding to a stop. Ignoring it as it disappeared into the distance, Naruto waited. He needed a boost and he needed it now. It didn't take long until the familiar rush filled his system, so with his energy levels sufficiently raised, Naruto pushed down with a major part of his chakra and shot into the distance. The blonde's eyes widened as he saw the building nearing in the distance. What was once an impressive stone structure was now replaced by masses of rubble and boulders. Standing off to one side though were the council members, all looking up at the lumps of rock helplessly. Swooping in, Naruto landed heavily enough behind the mages to lift them all off the ground from the shock. As they turned, Naruto found himself targeted by the elder's eyes. Uzumaki! How did you get back here so fast? What is happening at the tower? Kneeling, Naruto gently placed Simon on the ground. Standing and wiping his brow, Naruto took a breath before answering. Everything at the tower is under control. I think. Natsu and Urza are there and they are managing Jellal. I wasn't there too long until Jellal told me someone was destroying this place though, so I came back. Several sets of eyebrows rose at his report. The older lady with the sandy blonde hair that roared at him earlier for breaking into Etherean's room spoke up at this, a whole lot softer than he had first heard. So, you mean to tell us that Fairy Tail is fighting Jellal? Naruto narrowed an eye in thought before shrugging. Well, members are, yeah. Not the whole guild though. Just those two from what I saw. The woman frowned. What were they doing there? Naruto shrugged again. I dunno. I didn't get to ask. Nodding silently, the woman was then replaced by the small, strangely dressed man that had initially helped out Naruto. He walked up to the large man by the blonde's feet and sighed. Crossing his arms behind his back, he looked up at Naruto. And who is this poor soul? Sucking in his lips a little, Naruto frowned. This is Simon, one of the workers I told you about. It seems Urza knew him pretty well though. He was dead when I got there. Shaking his head in despair, the man looked him over. Such a waste of a young life. Inclining his head, Naruto stared down at the man intently. He seemed different from the rest of the mages in the council, in a good way too. Smiling slightly, Naruto nodded. Yeah. Urza asked me to bring him with me so we could bury him proper. Nodding, the small man looked up. Good. He deserves that at least. He then extended a small hand up towards Naruto. It is a shame that I didn't have a chance to introduce myself before this, but I suppose now is as good as any. I'm Yajima. Not really expecting a greeting right then, Naruto blinked a few times before gathering himself and stretching out a hand. Nice to meet you. Naruto. Shaking once, they let go and the newly introduced Yajima turned to look up at the broken building. Following his gaze, Naruto stared at the remains. So what happened here? While the question was more directed towards the small man by his feet, Guren answered. We believe it was a lost magic called Arc of Time. The building decayed around us right before our eyes. Nodding, Naruto looked over the council members. So everyone got out unhurt? Though the tall man nodded, Naruto frowned as he missed seeing someone. Hang on, where's Altair? Hearing a frustrated grunt below him, Naruto looked down to see Yajima shaking. She was with Jellal. She did this. Eyes widening, Naruto sucked in a breath. Wait, you mean gentle Altair did this? Seeing the man nod, Naruto looked around in shock for a moment. The girl seemed so placid that it was like trying to envision Hinata back home knocking down the Hokage's monument. Shaking his head, Naruto clenched his fists. Where'd she go? Sighing, the small man shrugged. We don't know. We lost sight of her in the rubble and haven't seen her since. Stilling himself, Naruto closed his eyes and let himself become completely immersed within the natural energies surrounding him. Feeling his internal reserve refilling, Naruto pushed his senses to their limits as he tried to find the wayward mage. As he searched though, Naruto found it astounding that she had managed to hide herself so thoroughly. Pushing further, Naruto frowned in concentration until he felt her usual spark flicker at the edges of his consciousness. Instantly focusing in that direction, Naruto spotted her faint glow leaving through the woods that surrounded the area. Snapping his orange eyes open, he jumped into the air. Old man. Please watch over Simon, I gotta go catch up to Altair and find out what's going on. No, wait Uzumaki. Ignoring the call, the air around Naruto's feet exploded and sent the ninja shooting away over the trees. Tracking the girl, Naruto frowned as he rapidly caught up. Why did she do that? Why would she even want to help someone like Jellal? Questions like these ran through his mind at a mile a minute and only urged him to catch up faster. Dipping in, Naruto scoured the ground for anything familiar. Seeing a flash of black, Naruto skidded to a stop and dropped to the earth before the rogue girl. It seemed she had been expecting him however as she greeted him with her ever defenseless smile. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto scrutinized her. She didn't seem to be hiding anything, so questions first. Holding a hand out, Naruto tried smiling. So, what did you go and do that for, huh? Raising her eyebrows, Altair looked at him innocently. With the council building? Naruto nodded. With the council building. Her features smoothed over and she smiled. It was all for Master Jellal. He wanted to create peace and his dream is nearly fulfilled. I have done my part and I am now off to meet up with him. Raising an eyebrow, Naruto shook his head. You seriously got sucked in by him? I thought you were smarter than that. The girl shrugged indifferently. Whether you believe me or not is inconsequential. He believes in a world of peace and is actually doing something to bring about his dream. That is a man worth following, even to my death. Naruto gave her a flat look. He was mad. I saw it. You aren't and you know some dead mage wouldn't fix everything. Something seemed to change in Altair's eyes but her external demeanor didn't move. Ah, but that's where you are wrong. Zeref is capable of anything. He is the greatest mage to ever have lived. He can make the impossible possible. Naruto sighed. Don't say that. Even if it was possible to bring him back, why use him as a crutch? All you people keep looking into the past. Forget him and make peace with your own strength. Smiling, Altair shook her head. No, there are some things that we can't achieve on our own. Groaning, Naruto threw both hands out in front of him. That's what friends are for. By yourself you mightn't be able to accomplish something, but with a team anything could be done. Chuckling gently, Altair looked down on him as one would look down on a confused child. That is why I have teamed up with Master Jellal. Together, we can achieve this. Slapping a hand to his face, Naruto shook his head. You really believe that, don't you? The woman nodded. Frowning, Naruto then pointed off behind him. Would you then mind telling me why you are heading in the opposite direction to where the tower is? Frowning slightly, the mage studied him. Not that it matters, but we have a separate rendezvous point. Her frown then turned to a grin and she slowly began walking towards him. Actually, why don't you come with us? You could help us immensely in our pursuit of the perfect world. Naruto watched carefully as she approached, muscles tensed as she entered his personal bubble. Your strength, your perception, your unique abilities, you could come with us, with me, and be together in a world just for us. What do you say? The gorgeous woman reached out both hands and dropped them gently onto Naruto's shoulders, her piercing eyes boring into his own. Standing firm, Naruto met her gaze. You wish for a perfect world for us? She nodded. Even though the man you are following is clearly insane. Altair raised an eyebrow. All a matter of perspective. Naruto shook his head. If you saw what I did, you'd know he is well off the deep end. A smirk graced the lady's face as she moved in closer. Suppose he is. Would you come with me anyway? Just the two of us. No one else. Naruto didn't budge. But what about everyone else? How would they survive? The temptress shrugged. I'm sure most would manage. What does it matter though? You would have me, and I would have you. Leaning in, Naruto's eyes widened as she reached out with her tongue and actually licked his cheek, purposefully dragging the slick muscle over his whiskers. Feeling more than seeing her grin, Naruto stifled a shiver and looked down at the side of her head as she started speaking. I am absolutely infatuated with you, Uzumaki. I cannot seem to understand you, try though as I might. So come with me because I do so wish to get to know you better. Of course. I'll let you get to know me better, much better. The red-blooded male within him was screaming at him to accept, but the logical side of the teen well overruled the impulse. Grasping her shoulders, Naruto pulled Altair back until he could look her in the eye. If you come back with me, I'll tell you as much as I can about myself. The woman smirked. And if I refuse? Naruto's eyes hardened. Then I drag you back to the council and stop you meeting up with your real alliance. Freezing, Altair narrowed her eyes. What are you talking about? Naruto raised an eyebrow. Don't try to lie to me, Altair-chan. I know just as well as you are that you aren't meeting up with Jellal. He's probably already fallen to Natsu, and I have no doubt that you know of this. I don't think you care about this perfect world either, just this Zerif guy for some reason. Throwing her head back, Altair laughed as she intertwined her fingers behind Naruto's neck. Her voice seemed to take on a harsher edge to it now though, sounding much more dominant than before. This is why I am so obsessed with you. Those fools back at the council never realized anything, yet you come along and somehow understand the situation better than they ever had. Grinning at him in a rather unnerving manner, Altair cocked an eyebrow. No, Jellal was never my master. I may have lied about that, but I never lied when I said just how much you interest me. You have the potential to be great, the greatest. You and Zerif together could achieve things that even legends claim impossible. I'll ask again, come with me. Shaking his head, Naruto tried to pull back. No, come back with me. I'll help you build this future paradise you want. Shaking her head, Altair wrinkled her nose. Future? No, I want something else. I want my past to be paradise. That threw Naruto for a loop. Furrowing his eyebrows, he looked at the woman. What is that meant to mean? She smirked. Will you come with me? Naruto shook his head. Sighing, the woman then leaned back, only her hands around Naruto's neck supporting her from falling over. I guess there's no point telling you then. It has been fun, but I suppose this is where we part. Suddenly, an orb shot out from somewhere behind Naruto, cracking him solidly in the back of the head. Letting go, Altair smirked as she watched him fall. What she didn't expect was for him to suddenly go up in a puff of smoke and have a log appear his position. A strong hand then grabbed her wrists from behind and drew them up behind her back. A knife found itself placed against her neck, but instead of fear, the woman began to feel a strange, hot sensation welling up in her chest. Looking over her shoulder, her eye met the ice blue ones of her captor. I don't want to fight you, but if it comes to it, I will force you to come with me. Licking her lips, Altair's eyes twinkled as the heat within her chest began traveling south. I think I rather like the sound of that. Snapping her arms from his grasp with a strength Naruto did not expect, Altair spun around with an outstretched hand, the strange orb that had smacked Naruto earlier following the path of her hand through the air. Ducking, the blonde then had to push himself backwards as the orb rapidly changed direction and aimed for his kidneys. Flipping back to a safe distance, Naruto eyed the orb wearily as it floated above Altair's outstretched hand. It didn't seem to be anything special, just a flawless crystal ball of a pale green color. Naruto was then forced to duck again as the ball shot in. Feeling it shoot through his hair, he looked up only to catch another ball straight to the middle of his face. Slapping a hand to his nose, Naruto groaned as blood began seeping from his sensory organ, the insides of his lips also proving to be cut. Spitting out a small wad of blood, Naruto looked up in confusion only to have to start performing more acrobatics as more and more of Altair's balls seemed to materialize out of nowhere. Sliding to the ground, Naruto held his hands out as a pair of tornadoes sprung to life around his arms. Lashing out, he diced up the nearest balls before focusing on the remainder that assailed him. Keen eyes tracked the balls and smooth movements precisely destroyed them as Naruto weaved his way through the objects. Lashing out with one last crunch, Naruto watched as the crystal dropped to the ground in fragments. Releasing the tightly swirling air from his arms, Naruto wiped up his nose before gazing upon Altair. "If that is all you have, you might as well just come with me now." The smirk on the woman's face told Naruto otherwise as she raised an amused eyebrow. "I may be young, but I was not in the council just to break up the sea of wrinkles. Don't underestimate me." It was then Naruto's noticed all the balls he previously crushed rising from the ground, the tiny fragments piecing themselves back together as they reformed. Staring at them in concealed surprise, Naruto resisted the urge to protect his nose. "This sucks." Sweeping her hand out, Altair laughed as they surrounded Naruto, completely trapping him in. "For you it would. Try this." Flash forward. The balls all suddenly rushed at him, all drawn toward the blonde the way metal would to a powerful magnet. Having no real option at the moment, Naruto braced himself and crossed his arms over his face as the balls hammered in on him, each smashing into his form with considerable power. Grunting as each hit, Naruto weathered the storm as best he could. It seemed to take a while, but eventually the blows drew to a stop and Naruto lowered his arms. Peeking out at Altair, he saw her grinning at him. "My, you are incredibly durable." Letting out a slow breath, Naruto pulled himself up straight and ignored the stinging bruises that were springing to life over his body. "Just a little trick I worked out." Narrowing her eyes curiously, Altair pointed at the blonde. "Would it have to do something with your eyes having changed? They are incredibly captivating." Naruto shrugged. "It helps." Eyes shining, Altair raised her hand again. "Wonderful. I can't wait to see what else you can do." Diving forward just before she dropped her arm, Naruto managed to avoid the majority of the balls streaking in again. The few that did near him were batted away until Naruto managed to catch one. Gripping it firmly, he zeroed in on the woman and with a cry, launched the projectile at her. Barely having the time to widen her eyes, Altair collected the ball straight to her unprotected stomach, knocking her clean off her feet and sending her flying back to hit a large tree behind her. Coughing involuntarily, a few flecks of blood accompanied the burst of air as it left her. Slumping slightly, her gingerly wrapped an arm around her middle as she heard Naruto making his way over. Taking a few steps off to the left, she looked up at him with a pained smile. "Not bad." Naruto didn't acknowledge the compliment, instead holding his hand out. "Come back with me." Her smile widened and the woman pushed herself up. "It'll take more than that to convince me." Frowning, Naruto reached out to grab her but had to jump back as a tree suddenly exploded from the earth right underneath the woman. Blinking up at her in surprise, Naruto could hardly believe that she was now sitting in the bough of a tree some 50 feet up. Taking another step backwards, he heard her lilting laughter float down to him. "Oh, don't be so surprised. There was a sapling under me, so I just brought it to its future." Blinking in confusion, Naruto stared up at her owlishly. "All I got out of that was you just grew a tree somehow." Rolling her eyes, Altair sighed dramatically. "Really? That's a shame, I thought you could have comprehended it." Shaking his head, Naruto began to rise off the ground. "All I understand is you coming back with me." Altair grinned again as she watched him rise, though this time her smile held a bit more malice. "You are a persistent little boy, aren't you? Come on then, make me want to go back." Glaring up at her, Naruto clenched his fists. "Gladly." The air around the blonde's feet seemed to warp before he shot up at the woman. Rearing back a fist, Naruto watched as yet another round of orbs came rocketing in towards him. Heedless of them, Naruto lashed out at Altair. Laughing as he missed by a fair distance, Altair failed to notice a number of balls exploding around his hand as it tracked through the air before she was suddenly flung from the tree with a mighty thwack. Flying backwards, she barely had time to regain her bearings before Naruto was upon her. Lashing out, the girl proved to have considerable reflexes as she managed to palm a fist wide. Unfortunately for her, the invisible attack hit her again, sending her shooting towards the ground, her mouth open wide in shock and pain. Landing heavily, she pulled in a breath to reinflate her lungs before rolling out of the way of a drop knee. Kicking out with her legs, Altair felt her heels connect solidly with her attacker. While not sending him flying as desired, Naruto was still sent skidding back across the ground, giving Altair enough time to recover herself. Flipping back up to her feet, she spun around with her arm outstretched to increase its velocity before flinging an orb directly at Naruto. The blonde jumped in an attempt to dodge, but the ball suddenly shimmered in the air before separating into hundreds of identical orbs, all intending to smack into Naruto. Two can play that game. Dropping senjutsu, sage techniques, Naruto crossed his fingers and cried out. With an area-encompassing explosion of smoke, he was suddenly lost in over 100 identical replicas of himself. The group let out a deafening shout as they all dived in at Altair. The mage herself had her eyes wide in shock and was rapidly throwing as many balls into the fray as possible. Clones exploded everywhere as the balls ripped through their numbers, but not quickly enough. Seeing the wall of orange approach, Altair slapped a fist into her palm before pushing it to the earth. Ice make, wall. The ground before the mage gave way as an enormous slab of ice rose into the sky, successfully protecting her from the onslaught of clones. She watched through the translucent window as clone after clone dashed itself against the thick wall. Despite being so solid, the object still rattling under the forces it was being subjected to. Breathing deeply, her wide eyes looked on in shock as the first dredges of fear began entering her mind. No wonder he defeated Jose, this kind of relentless attack was incredible. Her internal musings were cut short however as the ground beneath her feet began rumbling. Diving backwards into a crouch, she narrowly avoided Naruto as he exploded from the earth directly beneath her. Flinging out one of her endless orbs, she smirked when he let out a cry as the ball hit. Her eyes widened however when he suddenly exploded. Feeling the ground beneath her rumble again, she tried to dive clear but the orange-sleeved arms that shot up from the earth proved too fast. Grasping her arms solidly, they dragged her back down, a number of more hands sprouting from the earth around her, all latching onto her body and anchoring her to the ground. Groaning as she was pulled flat against the ground, the mage looked down past her feet as her opponent walked towards her. He had an unimpressed look on his face, clearly not enjoying hold her down like that. Stopping a few feet away from her, he crossed his arms and sighed. "Are you finished yet?" While her breathing was slightly labored, she still didn't look too bad from all the blows. Managing a smile, she quirked her top lip. "Well, this is exactly the kind of strength I was hoping you would have. I'm extremely impressed." Frowning, Naruto cast a quick glance at the ice wall behind him. "I'm more surprised you have two such different magics." The girl laughed despite her position. "Really? After what you just demonstrated? Please, you are by far more fascinating than me." Really beginning to wonder if he had a potential stalker on his hands, Naruto raised an eyebrow. "So, you gonna come with me yet or?" Leaving the sentence hanging, Naruto looked down at the woman. She merely chuckled and wriggled her eyebrows. "Or what? You have me tied up pretty good here. There wouldn't be a lot stopping you taking me for your own right now, would there?" With every word she spoke, the Altair Naruto thought he knew faded further and further from view. Frowning, Naruto looked down at her despairingly. "You should know that I'm not like that. Come on, let's take you back." Despite being held captive, the woman smirked. "You still think that's enough to beat me?" Her eyes flashed in a display of power as what looked like jagged ice dug into the earth from her back, the clones under her letting out muffled cries as they were impaled before they exploded. Now free, the woman rolled backwards into a kneeling position, her hands held out from her sides. Her grin was positively dark now, her dilated pupils focused intently on the blonde teen before her. "If you want me to come back peacefully means you will have to kill me." Seeing the orbs rallying around her, Naruto frowned as he tried to count them. They were separating into more and more by the second, the air filling with the crystal balls. Their number didn't stop growing however, and Naruto began to realize he could be in some trouble. Trees surrounding the pair started letting out cracks as balls began to run into them, chips of bark falling to the ground from the injuries. Crossing his fingers, Naruto forced his chakra through the seal and was once again surrounded by 100 or so copies of himself. The group kneeled and then charged the woman before she could create any more of those things. As they ran, the arms of all the blondes disappeared under a shroud of tightly wrapped air as Altair grinned and flung her arm towards the group. Raising his weapons, Naruto's arms became nothing but blurs as they began countering the attack. A staccato of cracks and pops filled the air as hundreds of the balls were pounded to dust. Several slipped through the onslaught though and were enough to deal a deadly blow to the clone they came in contact with. Despite this, the group was still steadily moving towards the ex-council mage at a steady pace. Altair's face was a picture of focus, yet her eyes were twinkling in excitement. While one hand remained held out, the other began manipulating time and the destroyed balls behind Naruto began to reform. Smirking as a large number of balls began rising behind the oblivious group, the mage crooked a come hither finger and the orbs charged straight in towards the group. The blondes didn't stand a chance. Surprised by the sneak attack from behind, their focus was lost and within moments they were completely overrun. Laughing loudly, Altair held a hand over her mouth as cries of agony filled the air, the voices accompanied by an almost deafeningly loud number of pops as the group was destroyed. Smoke filled the air and Altair unleashed another mocking laugh as the voices began to fade. As the cloud began to disperse, Altair stood up with a smug smile of victory on her face and began walking towards the hazy form of her opponent. Waving away a few stray wisps, she eventually came upon the bloodied form of Naruto lying face down in the dirt. Smirking, she stood by his side and towed him over onto his back. He let out a loud cough and a plume of blood shot from his mouth. Opening one pained eye, he looked up at the woman as she stared down at him, her unrelenting orbs all floating around her tauntingly. Allowing another chuckle to leave her lips, Altair crossed her arms under her ample bosom. "Well, I must admit, you impressed me. There aren't too many people who can last that long against my arc of time." Coughing again, Naruto welled up some more red in his mouth before spitting it off to the side. Taking a labored breath, he looked up at her. It was a spam attack. Laughing in his reference to the frequency she used her orbs, she held a hand over her face and looked down at him condescendingly. "You say that, yet you nearly matched me orb for orb with those imitations of you. Like you can talk." Naruto chuckled painfully. "Yeah. I guess so." Taking that as the end of their conversation, Altair flicked her hair with her hand. "Well, it was fun, my intriguing blonde. I'd take you with me, but I know you'd just fight me the whole way and that is effort I just couldn't be bothered to muster. Be thankful that I find you interesting enough to leave you alive. Ta-ta for now, hero." Turning, she began sashaying away. The second she presented her back though, a wide grin spread across Naruto's face. Looking up, Naruto's grin widened further and he mouthed, "Now." The next few moments for Altair suddenly decomposed into chaotic mayhem as all hell broke loose. One moment she was walking away from her victory, the next she was suddenly knocked to her knees by one of her beloved orbs. Staring up at it in shock, the mage only had time to say, "What?" before she was set upon by hundreds more of her precious crystals. Blow after blow rained down on her body and she let out an involuntary scream of pain as her form was subjected to the ruthless beating. Trying to clench her muscles, Altair weathered the thrashing as best she could, desperately trying to think up a reason as to why her own crystals were attacking her. Eventually the pounding stopped and Altair let out a relieved gasp as she flopped to her side. Her body spasmed in pain as she saw Naruto walk up to her. He was still totally destroyed from her previous attack but for some reason seemed completely unaware of his injuries. Her eyebrows furrowed deeply as Naruto looked down at her pityingly and she managed to bite out a pained, "How?" The blonde seemed to relax a moment and Altair's eyes widened in shock as his bloodied form simply disappeared. Blinking, the mage started up at the now otherwise unharmed teen. He had a couple of large bruises on his arms and face but they seemed to be fading rapidly. Despite herself, Altair then began chuckling painfully, the fits of laughter beginning to rock her body. Not quite sure what to make of it, Naruto frowned at the unusual behavior. Taking a deep breath, Altair managed to collect herself enough to look up at Naruto. "A transformation? A simple transformation? Genius!" Her voice then broke and she was overcome with a great coughing fit. While wanting to see if she was alright, Naruto knew if he offered her any sympathy now, she'd only use it against him. Still, he couldn't help but ask. "Can you breathe?" The coughing continued a moment more and the woman delicately spat out a mouthful of blood. "As fine as I could be after taking a beating from my own orbs." "How did you though?" Not really seeing any need to hide it any longer, Naruto crossed his fingers and the orbs all around them exploded into smoke, briefly returning to their original, orange-clothed form before dispersing into a cloud. Staring up at the now empty air, Altair shook her head. "Unbelievable." Struggling to push herself up, Altair managed to get her feet under herself and draw herself up. Shakily standing on badly corked legs, Altair winced. You are one magnificent specimen of a man, Uzumaki. Taking a step towards him, her legs gave way under her and she felt herself begin to fall towards the ground. Clenching her eyes, she expected the solid contact of ground but instead found a set of strong arms wrapped around her. Opening her eyes in surprise, she looked up at the teen as he frowned at her. Stop pushing yourself. You've done enough. For some reason, Altair didn't try to struggle and instead looked up into his worried eyes. Something within the girl seemed to clench and she found looking up into his face almost painful. Turning her gaze away, she nodded. All right, I concede. I'll come back with you. Grinning widely, Naruto helped her stand up straight. That's the way. I knew you'd come around. Suddenly, Altair squinted her eyes as a burst of light shocked her eyes. Dipping her head, Naruto chuckled and looked over his shoulder. What a good time for the sun. His voice was cut off as Altair's hand pressed against his chest and completely froze him solid. Pulling her hand away, Altair frowned slightly. You should never take your eyes off your opponent, Uzumaki. I thought you would have known that. Taking a step back, she winced and clasped a hand to her side. Looking up at the now ice man, the woman's face smoothed slightly and a smile tugged her lips. Still though, I do hope that in my next chance around in life, we get to meet under different circumstances. Until then, Naruto. Turning, the mage began limping away from the steaming block. Trying her best to ignore the guilt building up in her chest, the mage placed a hand over her heart and took a breath. It's okay, next time it will all be okay. I know it will. Stumbling along, she slouched against a tree for a moment. Breathing deeply, her ears pricked as she heard a thump from behind her. Pausing, she turned to look at the iced blonde. Narrowing her eyes slightly, she waited and was soon rewarded with the massive block jumping again. Turning to face it fully, shock began spreading across her face as splinters of ice began breaking off from the main body, enormous cracks beginning to shoot across its perfectly smooth surface. Loud creaks and groans began sounding out from the solid object as Naruto apparently fought from within his imprisonment. In one final heave, the block screeched as Naruto exploded from within, the massive halves floating in the air for a moment before Naruto thrust his hands outwards, twin jets of extremely powerful air blowing them far into the distance. He then vanished from Altair's sight to reappear a fraction of a second later right in front of her face, a tightly spinning ball of softly glowing blue energy packed into his hand. Angry orange eyes met with black ones for a split second before Naruto lashed out. Rasengan, spiraling sphere. Crying out in intense pain, Altair felt the vast strength of the attack rip through her clothes and into her stomach. Clenching her abs made little difference as she felt the ball bore into her. Within moments, the thing exploded and sent her spinning away to crunch into a solid tree, her body having enough inertia to embed itself deeply into the bark. Eyes dropping as her beaten body began to shut down, the mage's last thought before her mind slipped into unconsciousness was, Uzumaki, you survived. Breathing deeply, Naruto walked over to the girl. That had been a very close call. He hadn't managed to get a full breath before he was frozen, so another 20 seconds or so and he'd have been a goner. Realizing the fight was now officially over, the blonde dropped Senjutsu. In doing so, a wave of exhaustion washed over him and rivulets of sweat suddenly rushed down his face. Staggering slightly, Naruto placed a hand to a small tree to regain his balance while his other hand came to his forehead. Chuckling tiredly, Naruto closed his eyes for a moment. Flying from one side of the country to the other repeatedly seemed to drain a massive amount of energy. Taking a breath, Naruto pushed off and walked up to the tree that held Altair. Smiling slightly, Naruto preferred that this be how he remembered her. Her face smooth and calm, minus the scratches, swellings and little flicks of blood and bruising, not twisted into an ugly grin. Gripping an arm, the blonde gently pulled her from the tree and placed her over his shoulder. The girl never knew what she was in for because Naruto wasn't about to let another friend go AWOL. No matter how warped her beliefs, she was Naruto's friend and that was that. It was up to him to try and fix her slightly skewed view, that's all. Turning to start the trek back to the council, Naruto looked up to the early morning sun. Smiling wearily, Naruto let the morning rays bathe him in the beautiful red and golds as the light began creeping across the landscape. Several cautious sets of eyes watched as Naruto staggered back up towards the council members, his face dirty and weary but yet wearing a happy grin. Dropping to his knees, Naruto pulled Altair from his shoulder as gently as possible before laying her out on the ground. Grinning up at the council members, Naruto coughed and grinned again as his eyelids began dropping. Wow, that is a lot further to walk than I expected. Yajima walked forward as Naruto coughed again, his eyebrows bunched in concern. Uzumaki, will you be okay? Laughing wearily, Naruto found himself falling face first into the ground amidst a startled cry from the mages around him. Yeah. I'll be fine after a sleep. Smiling up at the small man, Naruto managed to muster up enough strength to point at the girl by his side. Take care of her, she's my friend. His hand then dropped to the ground as his eyelids slid shut in blissful respite. An annoying beat began breaking through Naruto's pleasant, dreamless sleep, the sound harshly bringing him back to consciousness. Groaning in annoyance, Naruto reached out in an effort to stop the horrible noise. The limb flailed around a moment before coming in solid contact with something. There was a loud crash as whatever it was hit the ground, but thankfully the beeping stopped. Sighing pleasantly, Naruto began to pull his eyelids up slowly, the blurry room making itself known. Blinking away the moisture that smeared his vision, Naruto looked around. He was in a small, single bedroom with nothing but white walls. There was a table pushed to one corner with a window above it, a door looking across at it from the opposite wall. A few of Naruto's items lay on the table, a couple of kunai, wire rope, his scroll, and underneath those, his clothes. Taking a breath in through his nose, Naruto's eyes watered as he picked up the overpowering scent of antiseptic. Rubbing away the tears, Naruto looked over the bed edge and saw an expensive-looking piece of equipment lying face down on the floor. Blinking, Naruto just rolled back over to look at the ceiling. That was already like that when he woke up, no matter what anyone said. Taking another breath, Naruto raised his arms and gave them a bit of a shake to see how they felt. Other than a bit stiff, they seemed fine. Crossing them behind his head, Naruto let out a sigh and began to wait for someone to come in. Normally he'd have been up and out the window before anyone could touch him, but today he was feeling pretty lazy. He'd just spent an entire night flying all over the country and then faced off a super tough opponent. He damn well deserved a bit of a rest. Closing his eyes, Naruto sighed contentedly before his stomach let out a gurgle. Looking down, the blonde groaned as the familiar pain of hunger clenched his stomach. Sitting up, Naruto looked around and saw a green button behind him. It had a little nurse picture drawn on it, so reaching out, Naruto gave it a poke. Not a second later, the door opened and a pretty little nurse walked in, clipboard in hand. Looking back at the button, Naruto grinned. Wow, now that's what I call service. Oh, I was just coming in to check you vitals, what happened here? Turning back, Naruto saw the nurse standing over the collapsed machine worriedly. Pursing his lips, the blonde looked at it dumbly. I dunno, I woke up and it was lying there. Fretting slightly, the woman flitted around the equipment as she tried her best to pick it up. Smirking, Naruto pulled the sheets off and stood up. Here, let me get that. Hearing her squeak, Naruto chuckled and pulled it upright. A piece fell off it, but overall it seemed okay. It was lucky it didn't receive the same damage Naruto's alarm clock usually did. Looking up at the nurse, Naruto then frowned as he saw her holding the clipboard over her face. What's wrong? She simply pointed down, never uncovering her face. You may want to get back into bed. We had the doctors make sure you were completely unharmed after we were informed of the number of injuries you sustained. Glancing down, it was then Naruto realized he was clothed in the usual hospital gown, but the back wasn't tied and as such had fallen open. Chuckling, the blonde jumping back into bed and pulled the covers up. He wasn't too worried about it, but the nurse seemed a bit flustered. At least it hadn't been a guy looking at him. Alright, I'm back in bed. Lowering the clipboard slightly, the nurse confirmed the statement before dropping it completely. A light flush adorned her cheeks as she walked over and checked Naruto's vitals, his cheeky grin not helping things in the least. Once that was done, the blonde rested back on his arms again and looked up as the nurse filled in her papers. So when's breakfast? I am so hungry. She didn't stop writing as she answered. Soon, very soon. You'll probably have a visitor join you too if that's alright. Nodding, Naruto grinned happily. I don't care who it is, just so long as I got food. Smiling slightly at his cheery outlook, the nurse nodded her head. Well, you seem perfectly okay, somehow, so I'd imagine you'll be released today once the doctors check you over. Grinning wider, Naruto looked out the small window to his left. He could see the blue sky with a couple of leaves from an unidentified tree dancing in the gentle breeze outside. Yeah. I want to go lay in the sun. Seems like a nice day. Just then, the door was pushed open and a trolley bearing food was wheeled into the room. Spinning to face it eagerly, Naruto ran his tongue around his mouth and clapped his hands twice as he readied himself for the meal. Laughing pleasantly at his actions, the nurse bowed. Well, I'll leave you be now. Take care now. Nodding absently, Naruto's trained eyes didn't leave the plate nearing him. Grinning as it finally reached his lap, he grabbed it thankfully, casting the attendant a happy smile. He then proceeded to practically tip the plate on its side and swallow whatever it held in one massive gulp. Passing it back to the stunned man, Naruto grinned and looked over at the cart greedily. More please. I think you can wait a moment, my boy. Looking down, Naruto saw the three blades walking along beside his bed. They then jumped and revealed themselves to actually be Yajima's hat as the little man landed on Naruto's bed. Oh, old man. How you going? Smiling, the mage crossed his hands behind his back. Not too bad, I suppose. A little sad the council building is gone, but unhurt otherwise. Naruto nodded. Yeah, that sucks I suppose, but at least another one can be built. Nodding, Yajima remained silent and simply took to staring at the blonde. Not usually used to such scrutiny, Naruto's face twitched and he tried to start up another conversation. So, how's Altair doing? The mage looked up in recollection. She's doing okay, I believe. I'm surprised she's as well as she is after whatever it was you did to her. You really put her through the ringer. I'd imagine she will be asleep for another few days to come. Chuckling, Naruto scratched her head. Yeah, my bad. She sure packed some power herself though. Yajima nodded. Indeed. She wasn't on the council for nothing. Naruto smiled gently before it slowly turned into a frown. Looking down at his hands for a moment, he then looked up at the man. So what will happen to her? Sighing unhappily, Yajima shook his head. I'd imagine she will be tried for treason and then sentenced to prison for a long while. Furrowing his eyebrows, Naruto crossed his arms. But, what if she was only doing it because she was ordered to? Or hypnotized? Or misled, like everyone else in the council? The man shrugged. I do not know. That is up to the judge to decide. Nodding sadly, Naruto realized that was probably the best she could get. Still, he managed a grin. Well, I'll make sure to visit her at least once a week to help keep her spirits up. She'll be able to make it through that, she's a strong girl. Chuckling, the old man nodded. I like your outlook, Uzumaki, very positive. Yes, I'm sure she'll do fine. Grinning, Naruto scratched the back of his head. Yeah, you can't keep looking at the negatives, you know. He then lowered his arm and he let out a sigh as his features became more somber. So, what happened with Simon? Thinking for a moment, the old man's eyes lit up as he remembered. Oh yes, Simon. Poor fellow. He was sent back to Fairy Tail via convoy to be given to Urza Scarlet. She will bury him as she deems necessary, I'd imagine. Nodding, Naruto then looked up in confusion. Hang on, how long have I been asleep? Smiling, the man looked out the window. A lot shorter than many of us predicted. It has only been one day. Raising his eyebrows, Naruto repeated him. A whole day? That's like ages. Chuckling, the man turned back to Naruto. Ah, to have the energy of youth again. Yes, a day. Pulling himself straighter, Naruto frowned. I want to get back to Fairy Tail so I can be there with Urza. Yajima studied Naruto's face for a moment before smiling softly. You are a good friend, Naruto. The convoy was sent yesterday afternoon, so if you hurry, you could probably make it back in time to catch her. Naruto nodded. Yeah, I was already planning that. I just need to get dressed and I'll head out. Yajima raised an eyebrow. And the doctors? Naruto laughed. I'm fine. This just frees up a bed for someone who actually needs it. Laughing alongside the blonde, Yajima nodded. You remind me of Makarov when he was younger. Pausing, Naruto looked at the mage. The old man? Really? Yajima nodded. Yes, I was close friends with him when we were younger. Anyway, enough talking. I'll take my leave now that I know you are okay. Grinning, Naruto gave him thumbs up. Thanks for that, old man. I'll come see you later too. Nodding, The man dropped down from the bed and walked out the door. Waiting until it was closed, Naruto jumped up and quickly discarded his garment and redressed in his favorite jacket and pants set. They had been washed to his delight, and whatever cleaning agent they used seemed to bring out the orange's inner glory. Turning to face the window, Naruto heard the door open one more time. "Oh, and Naruto, here is your payment." Turning back to face Yajima, Naruto saw him holding out a small slip of paper. Taking it, Naruto studied the amount before shaking his head. "No, this isn't right, the amount's wrong. Get it back to me later." Smiling, the mage shook his head. "No, that's right. Jellal and Altair had an account with us, as we all do, and seeming they deserted us, the money became collateral. After everything you did for us, I believe that should cover you for your efforts." Looking back down at the check for 5 million jewels, Naruto shrugged and tucked it away safely. "Well, thank you heaps for that. I definitely owe you a meal." Yajima nodded. "Please put 12 slices of roast pork in my ramen then." Naruto sucked in a deep breath as he openly gaped down at the man in newfound wonder. You like ramen?" Yajima nodded once. Eyes glistening in abundant joy, Naruto ran a forearm across his eyes as he struggled to contain his happiness. "I think we are gonna get on perfectly, Dadabayo." Nodding again, the small man turned and looked out the door. "You best leave now. The doctors are on their way." Allowing one manly tear of camaraderie to slide down his cheek, Naruto nodded before pushing the window open and slipping out. Chapter 24. While the desire to get back was high, Naruto still took the trip home more leisurely than he otherwise would. He was still feeling a bit stiff in himself, so a casual jog was just what the doctor ordered. Granted, that casual jog was beyond a standard human sprint, but still, the time it gave Naruto was enough that his mind had a bit of time to wander through things. The first question in his mind related directly to Altair and whatever was going to happen to her. What old man Yajima said might have just been speculation, but the idea of Altair cooped up in some tiny little cell wasn't what Naruto wanted for her. He wondered if he might be able to put his wizard saint title to some use and maybe help her out. It wasn't too pressing, however, seeming she probably hadn't even woken up yet. Next on Naruto's mind was Urza. The blonde had a sneaking suspicion that she was directly involved with everyone there as well as the events that led up to it. If the brief glimpse she gave him into her past was anything to go by, Simon as well as that cat girl Miliana must have been at least mildly close friends with her. Jellal though. Naruto hazarded a guess that Jellal meant more to her than she let on. That pained anguish in her eyes when she asked the ninja to kill him spoke all the words she didn't. Perhaps after all this was over, she might tell him a little more. It wasn't his place to ask, but at the same time he was really curious. As his thoughts drifted, Naruto then began to think over that scroll Tsunade-bachan had sent him. It really was fantastic to hear from them, it was just super annoying he couldn't reply. The fact that they had already tried to reverse summon him stuck in his mind though. Usually he could feel the pull before he was actually transported to wherever they wanted him. This time though, nothing. That could only mean that the apparent distance that they were trying to summon him over was absolutely huge. It was no wonder that the biggest thing the blonde had been able to call on was a baby toad. Actually, Naruto nodded as a bit of a plan began to form in his mind. Even if the best he could summon right now was a baby toad, maybe that would still be enough to get a message back. It couldn't be too big, just enough to say he was alright. Grinning, Naruto did a little jump and clicked his heels together. It was a good plan, simple and, hopefully, effective. He might even be able to get a few more tools sent over. Now that would be cool. Having trusted his feet to carry him where he needed, Naruto took note of his surroundings and realized he was now close to Magnolia. Maybe another 10 minutes at this pace and he'd be at the guild's doorstep. 10 minutes did seem like a long time though. Grinning, Naruto couldn't help but jump into the air and cut down some serious time on his travel. The excitement of seeing how Urza and Natsu did was a bit too much for the blonde to handle at the moment. Letting his hands reach out to the side, Naruto weaved a path towards the guild, chuckling as he heard the shocked voices from below. Shaking his head, Naruto couldn't work out why more ninja hadn't tried mastering the art of flight. It was so awesome. Dipping in low, Naruto pulled himself up to a stop just before the entrance and grinned. A curly head of brown hair had caught Naruto's eye. Kana was sitting off by herself drinking her usual barrel of rum or whatever it was. Sliding in through the door, Naruto stuck to the walls and crept around behind her. Reaching out with his fingers, he stifled a chuckle before running them up and down her exposed sides rapidly. Coochie coochie coo. Boos instantly exploded from Kana's nose and mouth, her half-drowned shriek drawing most of the guild's attention as the woman desperately tried to escape the merciless torture while at the same time clear her airways of fluid. After a few seconds, Naruto let go and jumped back and held his sides as he let his laughter burst forth. The confused and more than slightly pissed off brunette turned her watering eyes around to spy the troublemaker clutching his sides as he laughed at her misfortune. Growling, Kana did her best to wipe her eyes down before clenching her fists. "Oh, you are going to pay for that." Reaching into her satchel, the woman drew out several cards before launching them at the blonde. Sexy lady card. The projectile sped across the distance and exploded into a cloud of smoke when they were within several feet of Naruto. Suddenly, Naruto's laughter was cut off as a body latched onto his own with a set of warm water balloons pushing into his face for some reason. Backing up, the teen felt another body latch onto his right side, followed by another on his left. Not quite knowing what was going on, Naruto felt more and more weight pile up on him until he collapsed under it. Now that everything had shifted, Naruto could finally see what Kana had set upon him. A beautiful female face along with several other female parts stared at him momentarily before Naruto realized just what happened. Finding his hands crushed under multiple bodies, the blonde could do nothing about the instant rise of his blood pressure. From outside the pile of beautiful female bodies, Kana burst out laughing as the entire hill exploded internally, torrents of blood squirting out between the gaps of silky feminine limbs. "How do you like that, huh? That's double payback for making me spill all that booze, as well as dragging me out to that stupid thing with Urza." After a moment, the girls all went up in a puff of smoke revealing Naruto sitting on the ground looking rather pale from blood loss. He had an extremely dopey look on his face however and a glazed look over his eyes. Turning his head to look at Kana, he managed a grin. "Yeah, I like that a lot. You been working on the training, hey?" Smirking, the brunette sank back into her chair and rested her head on her hand. "A little. You were my first test. I think I should count that as a full success." Grinning stupidly, Naruto pulled himself up into a cross-legged position. "Yeah, that was a good loss. I like losing to something like that." Shakily pulling himself to his feet, Naruto staggered over to Kana amidst loud laughter from the guild and slumped into the chair opposite. Dropping his head to the table, the blonde let his impressive regeneration abilities raise his blood count to safer levels again. Quite happy with her victory, Kana pulled another barrel from somewhere and popped its cork before taking a celebratory swig. Wiping her mouth down, she turned her gaze back to the blonde. "So where you been, huh? I haven't seen you around." Still not quite ready to move yet, Naruto spoke into the table. "The council needed me to do some mission for them. All done now, so I'm home." Smiling, Kana took another mouthful before dropping the barrel. Her smile also fell slightly with it as she remembered something. Did that coffin have something to do with it? Feeling a bit better, Naruto gently pushed himself up. "Yeah. Urza knew him. It's not really my place to say though, so I'll let her tell you everything. I just helped get him home." "Where is Urza anyway?" Nodding softly as Naruto spoke, Kana sighed. "Well, that's sad when you lose someone like that. I dunno if I'd have the guts to ask Urza what happened though, even if she was here. She's still off at the amusement resort her, Natsu, Gray and Lucy went to." The blonde blinked at that new piece of information. "They're where?" Kana raised the barrel and swallowed another satisfactory mouthful. Smacking her lips, she looked over. "You left just before they did. They somehow got their paws on a few nights' stay at the Akane resort." Grouching slightly to herself, Kana took another calming mouthful. "Lucky bastards. Do you have any idea how much it is to stay there? I wish I could have gone." Naruto grinned. "How much is it, huh? I bet I could cover it." Pausing mid-sip, the brunette cast an interested eye over toward him. "How so?" Naruto grinned. "Let's just say I got paid well for that council mission." Dropping the barrel, Kana rested an arm on the table. She then pointed two fingers at Naruto's eyes, then back at her own. "Okay kid, this is my serious face. Take a good look at it. See how serious it is right now? It is this serious because if you can honestly get me into that place for a night to two, I will love you forever, I swear on it. If not, there will be hell to pay for you raising my hopes so high." Naruto set his face just like Kana's. Serious face right back at you. You wish you could be as serious as me right now. 'Cause we could totally go. Raising an eyebrow, Kana slowly lifted the barrel to her mouth and took a speculative sip. Alright, how much you got to play with? While carefree, Naruto knew what a woman could do when faced with a large amount of money. Chuckling, he patted his pocket. That's a secret, but enough, comfortably enough. I got it on a check though, so I'll have to set up a bank account or something. Nodding slowly, Kana pushed herself up. Alright then. I'm gonna go back home and start getting ready. You are going to go talk with Mira-Jane and set up that account. Raising an eyebrow, Naruto looked up at the tall woman. Why can't you help me? Chuckling, the mage turned. There's a reason Mira manages all the jobs. She is an absolute whiz when it comes to money. Meet you back here once you're done. Watching her leave, Naruto turned his attention to a number of other mages that had surrounded his table, namely Wakaba, Mikao, and a couple of other guys. They were all standing over him smiling rather strangely. His eyes thinning, Naruto looked them all over cautiously. What do you all want? Nonchalantly scratching his blue mustache, Mikao looked down at the blonde. Oh, we couldn't help but overhear that you may have a couple of tickets to Akane. Snorting, Naruto instantly figured them out. No. Reason 1. Not enough money for that many people. Reason 2. You're not female. You can't hang off my arm and make me look even more awesome than usual the way someone like Kana could. Seriously affronted by the abrupt denial, the group of men spluttered indignantly for a bit before Wakaba managed to find his tongue. What makes you think Kana would be on your arm in the first place? Grinning, Naruto walked through them. It's called money and 2 little tickets to paradise for a day or 2. That's how I know. Growling, the men watched as Naruto breezed through them. Staring at his shrinking back, Mikao leaned into Wakaba and whispered into his ear. What do you reckon? We jump him and force him to take us. Taking a deep breath of the ever-present pipe in his lips, the dirty blonde shook his head. Nah, that would take way too much effort. You can try if you want. Shaking his head, Mikao began leading the way back to their tables. There's no chance in hell I'd bother to do something like that alone. Come on, let's just get another mug of booze. Leaning on the bench, Naruto watched as Mira-Jane cheerfully served a civilian a meal. Waiting until she was done, Naruto raised a hand. Yo! As her eyes lay on him, Mira-Jane squealed excitedly and dashed over before taking him up in a warm hug. Naruto! How are you? Did your mission go well? Encircling the girl with his own arms, Naruto nodded. Nice to see you too. Yeah, it went okay. I guess you know about Urza's friend. Letting go, the woman stood back with a sad smile. Yeah, I was the one they came to when they wanted to find Urza. It's such a shame. Nodding, Naruto smiled a little. Yeah, it's never nice. Where is he if you don't mind me asking? Mira shrugged. They didn't let too many people see the casket. Once they found out Urza wasn't here, they simply left after saying they'll be back once Urza returns. How they'll know that though I will have no idea. Naruto didn't bother questioning that. Let the council people do what they wanted. Less fuss that way. Having worked out where Simon was though, the blonde then decided to switch to a happier subject. Kana just told me she's actually out at an amusement park right now though. Grateful for the topic swap, Mira-Jane nodded. Yup. They left a few days ago. I'm glad for her because she really needs the break. I wish I could have gone though. Smirking, Naruto raised an eyebrow. Well, I guess it's just your lucky day. I got a nice little bonus so I was wondering if you'd like to come. Kana's decided she'll come too. The waitress seemed to deflate slightly at hearing that. Kana? My, isn't she lucky? I wish I could come too, but I've got way too much work on here at the moment. The blonde groaned. No, that sucks. Come anyway. I can make up a couple of Narukos and have them work here while you come. Smiling sadly, Mira-Jane shook her head. Normally that wouldn't be too much of a problem, but the guild really needs money so I must stay to manage the funds and jobs. Pouting, Naruto crossed his arms. I wish you could come too. You deserve a break. The blonde then blinked as his original mission resurfaced in his mind. Actually, Kana did say that you could help me with opening a bank account though. Apparently you're the best with money. The girl nodded. Oh, I'm not too bad I suppose. I was just about to take my break anyhow so we can go and do that now if you need it. Nodding happily, Naruto held out a hand. Please do, my lady. Your assistance would be greatly appreciated. Giggling, Mira reached out daintily and took the hand. My Naruto, I didn't know you knew how to use words like that. Taking offense to that, Naruto snorted indignantly. What do you mean? I'm no big words like that. Giggling again, Mira Jane crinkled her nose and pinched his cheek gently. No, you just seem too cute to be using words like that. Not really knowing if she was still taking a shot at him or not, Naruto looked down at her suspiciously as she led the way out of the guild. The actual opening of the account was relatively painless when it came down to it. Naruto expected paperwork to be completed, but apparently Mira was a frequent customer and had done this a few times before. The fact a wizard saint wanted to open an account with that particular branch also seemed to make things roll along a lot smoother too. When it was time to hand over the check though, Mira Jane's eyes widened significantly at the amount. Pulling Naruto aside, she began whispering furiously into his ear. Naruto, what is this? 5 million jewels? That is staggering. Where did you get it all? Grinning, Naruto shrugged. The council seemed to like what I did for them. Blinking several times, the girl looked back down at the slip of paper. They never pay anyone this kind of amount. Not really knowing what to say, Naruto just pointed back at the expectant attendant. So does that mean I can't bank it now? Coming back from her surprise, Mira giggled bashfully and turned. Oh, no you can. Here, let me do this part. She then handed over the check and Naruto resisted the urge to laugh as the man's eyes swelled inside. He looked from the piece of paper to Naruto and back again several times before swallowing nervously. Pushing across a pen, he nodded. If you would just sign this, Mr. Uzumaki. I have to go get the manager. Naruto scratched down something that looked like a signature as the man left. What he didn't expect then was for the paper to sign brightly and apparently copy the signature to the bench top beneath. That then faded into the wood and Naruto was left wondering what just happened. He looked over at his companion and pointed. So, what was that for? Raising a finger, Mira Jane launched into an explanation. Essentially what just happened was they copied your signature into their database. From there, it will be sent via information lacrima to all the banks around the world, so you will have full access to your money wherever you go. Naruto nodded slowly. So, sighing patiently, Mira patted his hand. You can get your money from anywhere you want. That explains it. While always cautious with his money, Naruto never really used the banks back in the elemental nations simply because he didn't really have enough to justify opening an account. That and they always tried to rip him off whenever he went in there. Hearing a door open, a well-dressed man in his mid-30s was revealed before walking over to Naruto excitedly. Extending a hand as he neared, Naruto had to squint slightly as his teeth glinted. Mr. Uzumaki. What a pleasure it is doing business with you. I'm the store manager, Jake Steels. I have just been informed of your incredible deposit and wish to offer you this opportunity to. The words kind of drifted to the back of Naruto's head as he watched the man's lips absently. As this went on, Mira could see Naruto entering into his empty box and essentially switching off from the world. Chuckling to herself, the girl shook her head and took over and saved Naruto from any further boredom. Here Mr. Steels, let me talk with you about that. Naruto has trusted me with starting his account, haven't you Naruto? Blinking, Naruto realized he was being spoken to. Looking at the expectant faces, Naruto pursed his lips as he hoped he guessed the right answer. Yes. Internally fist-pumping as the two people before him smiled widely, Naruto knew he answered correctly. Following the two as they walked away to a room, Naruto found himself a seat and dropped into it. Jake smiled widely at Naruto as he made himself comfortable before turning his attention back to Mira Jane. From there, the time seemed to magically slow down to the point where every second seemed to take 10 to pass. It was nearly identical to what happened back in the days of the Ninja Academy, so Naruto began to wonder if there was a conspiracy going on or something. Sighing, the once comfy seat now felt like it had sticks poking out of it. Struggling to get relaxed, Naruto groaned and looked at the clock. This was gonna take a while. Walking back to the guild, Naruto moaned as he twisted his back around and felt his spine pop back into place. Stretching his hands high above his head, a few more ligaments realigned and the blonde sighed. Turning to look at his smaller companion, Naruto shook his head disbelievingly. How you willingly walk into a time capsule like that I'll never know. I swear even boring itself was bored. Rolling her eyes, Mira Jane looked up at the teen. It wasn't that bad. We were barely in there for 30 minutes. Naruto shook his head. Lies. That had to be at least 2 hours. Shrugging, the girl stepped through the guild entrance. Whatever you believe, Naruto. Just then a deeper female voice called out to Naruto and the blonde turned. Smiling as he saw Kana running towards him, he waved. Hey Kana. All ready? Drawing up beside the pair, Kana nodded. All set. She motioned to a backpack over her shoulders and grinned. Bet you didn't think a girl could pack light, did ya? Naruto shrugged. With what I had to do, girls didn't have the option of taking forever to pack. Turning back to Mira Jane, he took the girl up in a surprise hug and lifted her easily off her feet. She giggled in his arms as he squeezed her a bit before setting her down. I still think it sucks you can't come. Sighing unhappily, Mira nodded. Yeah, but work comes first, I suppose. Grinning cheekily, Kana decided to interrupt and draped herself over Naruto's shoulder. Maybe next time, Mira. I'll do my best to keep Naruto company for you until we get back. Looking up at the brunette, Mira smiled pleasantly as her form seemed to darken slightly. Naruto realized what was happening and wisely decided to step back. Oh, you needn't do that for me. Naruto and I keep well enough company that you don't have to strain yourself to help keep it alive. You just do whatever you have planned and Naruto will do his. Having clued on a bit better than Urza did when placed in the same position, Kana began sweating slightly as she looked down at the cheery waitress. Sure thing. Yeah, Naruto's a big boy, he can take care of himself. Isn't that right? Turning to look at the blonde, her eyes begged for help. Not really trusting himself here, Naruto just nodded. Well, that's fine then. The shadows seemed to lessen around the girl and she smiled up at them both pleasantly. Off you go then. You don't want to waste too much time here. Nodding, Kana backed away with a wave as Mira returned the gesture. Well, see you in a day or two. Resisting the urge to then drag Naruto away, the brunette walked as quickly as politely possible away from the curvy barmaid. A while later, Kana and Naruto were flying through the air as they rushed toward the fabled resort. Kana was still getting over the fact Naruto could fly and as such was clinging onto him via a death grip. If the blonde didn't know how to reinforce himself with chakra, he'd have been suffocated by now. Trying to get her mind off the heights they were traveling at for the moment, Naruto looked over his shoulder at the girl. So, you're a bit scared of Mira-chan, huh? Shuddering, Kana shook away old memories. And with good reason too. You never saw her when she was younger. Raising an eyebrow, Naruto waited for her to continue. She was like crazy strong and at the same time insane. She regularly picked fights with Urza just for the hell of it. Snorting, Naruto shook his head. Mira Jane? That same one? No way. Kana nodded vehemently. Nah, I swear. You saw that darkness around her before? That was a tiny bit of her former ability, though I don't actually know why it's coming back. Naruto pondered the happy girl for a moment. So, what was her magic exactly? Kana shook her head at this. If she hasn't told you then I really shouldn't. The blonde mentally slapped himself. Of course he shouldn't ask Kana. That'd be like some random asking Kakashi to reveal all Naruto's secrets. Yeah. I should have known that. Still, it's a weird feeling magic. My stomach starts feeling funny. Raising her eyebrows, Kana shuffled around on Naruto's back. Really? That's an unusual reaction to, oh look. I can see it. Turning his gaze upward, Naruto followed the elegant finger as it pointed into the distance. As his eyes rested upon the massive structure, stars began shining brightly in the blonde teen's eyes as he saw what looked like the most incredible place on Earth come into view. Cylindrical towers stood up everywhere from an old-style castle, their peaked roofs pointing up to the sky. Windows covered them all, indicating that they were most probably the hotel rooms that the patrons stayed in. The main body of the place itself faced towards the ocean, a magnificent beach spread out before it for all to use. Picturesque scenery surrounded the resort, a sizable mountain behind the park donning the name Akane Resort. As Naruto got closer, he began to make out a face on the largest dome, right in the middle of the park and situated over the main bulk of the castle. Raising an eyebrow, Naruto couldn't help but wonder who decided that a happy duck was to be the face that everyone thought of when they considered the place. Within the mouth of the duck again was the name Akane Resort, just in case you couldn't see the enormous sign behind on the mountain. Outside of that though was what really drew the blonde's attention. Weaving in and around the massive towers were tracks on tracks on tracks of rides, each holding a tiny little buggy of screaming people as it circled the park. Behind that was an enormous Ferris wheel easily 20 times bigger than anything Naruto had seen before. The tiny little things that came to Konoha from time to time had absolutely nothing on this beast as it stretched some 100 feet into the air. Sucking in a stray strand of drool, Naruto could only begin to imagine the number of other things the place must have held if those enormous constructions were visible from so far away. Grinning widely, Naruto quickly wrapped an arm around each of Kana's legs. Before the girl could even begin to voice her complaints, Naruto doubled his speed and shot towards the park with a terrified scream from his passenger. Woo-woo. Now standing within the room he had rented, Naruto looked around in awe. It was easily 3 times the size of his apartment back home and 30 times better furnished. A skin-colored cream covered the walls with a darker maroon coating the ceiling. A quarter of a pillar was visible in each corner of the room, each one covered with a soothing crisscross pattern that faded into the walls. A massive doorway stood proudly off to the side, the canary yellow curtains drawn back to reveal a spacious balcony overlooking the pristine ocean. 2 beds sat opposite the doorway, each covered in an expensive velvet quilt embroidered with silk and gold thread. Pictures decorated every wall, some of magnificent landscapes and mountain scenery, others of underwater caverns and yet others of the sky, captured at different times during the day and night. The occasional pot plant either hung from the wall or sat inconspicuously off to the side to help add a little greenery to the overall appearance. Towards the back of the room was a table and chairs, the eating place separated from the kitchen via a small dividing wall. Opposite the quaint kitchen was a door that led off toward the bathroom and shower, the washing machine hiding in there somewhere too. Finally finishing off the room was an enormous, ceiling-to-floor mirror that was held by an incredibly ornate wooden border. Intricate swirls and twists threaded their way through the wood in a way that only a master craftsman could hope to accomplish. A thump behind the blonde drew him from his wide-eyed staring. Turning, he saw Kana drop her backpack onto one of the beds and grin up at him. "I call shots on this one." Chuckling, Naruto rubbed the back of his head as he turned to face her fully. "Look, I'm kinda sorry you had to do this." Cutting him off with a wave of the hand, Kana began digging around in her bag. "Bah, it's not like you could help that all the double rooms have been booked." Chuckling again, Naruto lowered his hand and looked around at the room again. Time must have passed pretty quickly when he heard Kana laugh behind him. "You really that impressed by this place?" "I mean, yeah, it's super fancy, but it's not even one of the super luxurious rooms." Shrugging, a small smile tugged at Naruto's mouth. "Yeah, maybe, but my place doesn't even compare to this. I might as well be standing in a palace right now." Raising an eyebrow as she continued to dig around in her bag, Kana watched as the teen seemed to fade into memories for a moment. Deciding that enough was enough, the girl strode forward before flicking him right in the middle of the forehead. "Ouch! What was that for?" Grinning at him, Kana placed her hands on the curves of her hips. "You looked like you were about to fade away on me there, so I had to come save you. For now though, who cares what you live like back home? Here, you pretty much are royalty. You're a wizard of the 10 saints for crying out loud. Forget about home, if only for a day or two, and enjoy this place. You bought this, not me. I'm just a trophy girl for all I care now. You better enjoy yourself, mister, or else." Seeing the teasing glint in the brunette's eyes, Naruto smirked and tried to flick her back. "Fade away. You wish. There ain't no way I'd let you have this whole place to yourself." Laughing, Kana slung an arm around her companion. "That's what I wanted to hear. Now stop gawking at the room and go do something. I'm off to find Gray and hopefully coax him into a drinking battle. I'll catch you later for that date you owe me." Excessively sighing, Naruto pushed Kana off his person. "I bring you out here, rent you a room, and you still want that date?" Winking, Kana shook her chest a little. "What, you don't want to see the dress I especially brought along for the date?" Distracted momentarily by the impressive amounts of breast swinging before him, Naruto shook his head. "Okay, I take that back. You have yourself a deal." Cocking her eyebrow teasingly, Kana turned and wandered toward the door. "That's what I thought. I'll catch you later." Walking through it, she pulled it closed after her with a soft click. Watching it for another few seconds, Naruto sighed and shook his head. That girl was shameless and he liked it. Grinning at the thought of the not date they had planned, Naruto rubbed his hands together in excitement. That came later though. For now, he had some important business he had to attend to. Wandering into the main gaming room, Naruto looked around in awe. The roof stretched high above his head and the whole place had this kind of sparkly hint in the air all around. Multiple gambling tables filled the room, joyous cries emitting from some as people won big while moans of disappointment sounded out from others as their holiday was cut short. Despite all the splendor around him, Naruto shut his eyes tight and shook his head. No looking around, gotta find Urza. It was her energy signature that had led him here in the first place, so that was the only reason he came here. Looking around for the striking redhead, Naruto squinted as he tried to spot her. Try as he might though, he couldn't see her usual armor-plated torso anywhere. Slowly walking down the main aisle, Naruto tried to pick up on the woman's signature. It was so much harder when he wasn't using senjutsu, sage techniques, but Naruto wasn't one to give up. Desperately sorting through the plethora of beacons, Naruto eventually stumbled across the one he was looking for. Following it, the blonde was surprised to find himself looking at the back of an extremely well-dressed young lady. A beautiful midnight blue, ankle-length dress covered her body, her neck and back exposed to the world via a crossing number of threads that revealed skin all the way down to the small of her back. A pair of elegant, elbow-length white gloves covered her hands which gave her a very graceful air. Her hair was done up in a tasteful top knot, her fringe left to frame the sides of her face. It was the striking red he had been searching for, so with a grin, Naruto reached out and tapped her shoulder. Hey Urza. Turning, the girl looked up in surprise at who it was. Naruto. I wasn't expecting to see you so soon. Happy only just told me you had arrived. Chuckling at the confrontation he had with the excitable cat, Naruto nodded. Yeah, I ran into him. He left pretty quickly to tell everyone as soon as he saw me. Nodding, Urza smiled gently. Yes, he has a habit of doing that. So how have you found this place so far? Grinning widely, Naruto stared, waving his arms around. It is huge. And so awesome. Rides are everywhere and there's even more food than I can eat. There are nicely dressed people who are actually easy to talk to as well and talk about all the pretty girls. Wait, getting sidetracked here. Shaking his head, Naruto refocused. The reason I came down to find you was because I actually need to talk with you in private. Frowning as Naruto's demeanor turned serious, Urza nodded. Is it anything that is happening right now? The blonde shook his head. No, but you'll still want to hear about it like, now. Urza nodded again. Very well. I just had to make sure everyone was okay. She then began walking past Naruto and led him away from the group and into a quiet room down the back. Looking around, Naruto blinked as he realized every booth had dual seats that were covered in a soft velvet red. A table separated them, but the blonde didn't think too many people would be sitting opposite one another in here. Walking down the back to one of the empty areas, Urza slid into one of the seats and motioned for Naruto to join her. Dropping into the soft couch, Naruto had to fight the urge to grin as he bounced about for a second. Feeling Urza looking at him, Naruto turned and saw her staring at him with that usual seriousness. Now that he was here though, Naruto sighed and scratched his head as he tried to think of a way to break it to her. So, the reason I actually called you out here was about your friend, Simon. Instantly stiffening as the name was said, Urza furrowed her eyebrows but remained silent. Well, I got him to the council safely before I had to go off and sort out some other stuff. They went and put him in a coffin for you and prepped him and everything for the burial. They took him to Fairy Tail to look for you, but when they found out you weren't there, they took him somewhere else to wait for you to get back. Nodding sadly, Urza looked down at her gloved hands. That is most generous of the council, especially after what he did. Naruto tried smiling for her. Well, I know at least one of the council guys was sympathetic towards him. Maybe he did it for you. Nodding again, Urza didn't look up. I must find out who did that for me and thank them personally. The blonde nodded. Yeah, I bet he'd like that. Anyway, this brings me to what I wanted to ask. Now looking up, Urza's hurt eyes stared into Naruto's own. And that is... Scratching his head, Naruto scowled as he tried to word it right. Well, I wanted to know if you'll go back now. I know you can if you wanna, but at the same time I dunno if you'd wanna spend the rest of the time off you have here. The council has him in good hands, so he certainly won't go bad or anything. Frowning as he heard that last statement, Naruto shook his head. But yeah, Mirachan said you deserve this break, but at the same time no one could blame you if you wanted to go back and bury him right away. If you really needed, I could have you back at Fairy Tail within the hour. Blinking at Naruto's faith in his own speed, Urza studied him for a moment before relaxing slightly. Well, this is a difficult decision. I believe the others who knew him should have a say in this also. Raising an eyebrow, Naruto looked over his shoulder. Others? You mean that Millian catgirl? Giggling softly, Urza nodded. It's Miliana. And yes, her and two others who were extremely close to me and Simon are here. I believe they deserve the chance to hear this and then we can decide as a group what to do. Nodding, Naruto grinned encouragingly. Yeah, that sounds smart. I'm glad you know what you're doing now cause I'd have no idea. Smiling warmly at the blonde teen, Urza tipped her head to the side. Well, I thank you for letting me know this so quickly. She then reached out and gently took up Naruto in a brief hug. Though surprised by the action, the blonde just smiled and hugged her back. Drawing away, Urza then sighed. I suppose I must go find Miliana and the others now. As for you, you could go and find Lucy and let her help you find some more suitable clothing for the environment. Frowning, Naruto looked down at himself. What's wrong with this? Raising an eyebrow, Urza reached out and pinched the orange fabric. While it may be suitable for everyday use, it really isn't the type of clothing you'd wear to a formal room. Didn't you notice everyone looking at you? Blinking absently, Naruto shook his head. Nup. Rolling her eyes, Urza placed a delicate hand to her forehead. I should have guessed. No, you need something a bit more proper for this type of setting. Huffing, Naruto crossed his arms. But it'll just get ruined like my last new set of clothes. Gently pushing Naruto out of the booth, Urza stood up behind him. No they won't, because this time you won't be fighting in them. Now off you go and find Lucy. She'll be able to help you buy something more fitting and at a pretty good price too I'd imagine. Continuing to huff, Naruto looked away. Alright fine, but only because you asked. Giggling, Urza reached out and fondly ruffled his hair. Thank you Naruto. I shall talk with you soon. And with that, the beautiful redhead gracefully walked out of the room. Stomping along with his hands in his pockets, Naruto hunted about for Lucy as requested by Urza. He may have agreed to do this, but it didn't mean he had to like it. If anything, he was more worried about the time it could take to find something. If Lucy was anything like Mirachan, then Naruto better settle himself in for the long haul. Following his crappy sensing abilities directions, Naruto wandered through a number of rooms looking for his blonde target before giving up and just deciding to follow his nose. Sniffing at the air, Naruto found himself being directed back the way he came. Wandering along with his nose in the air, Naruto pretty much closed his eyes and followed the scent as he drifted through a few more rooms before coming to a stop in a small bar. Looking around, Naruto spotted the vibrant blonde as she animatedly chatted away with the bartender, accentuating her tail via wide arm movements. Wandering up, Naruto dropped into the seat beside her and poked her. Squealing, the girl turned to look at the offender. Once realizing who it was, she gave a little cry of surprise and wrapped her arms around his neck. Naruto! When did you get here? Grinning as she pressed her face against his, Naruto shrugged. Ah, not that long ago. Kana came with me too. I'm surprised you didn't know. We ran into Happy at the reception counter. Hearing this, the girl rolled her eyes and huffed. He probably forgot I existed. Moving on from that, she then fixed Naruto with a smile. So you and Kana are here, huh? What for? You have a date or something? Backing away from her seedy grin, Naruto chuckled. No, nothing like that. She just wanted to come along so I thought why not. Besides, she said she'd be my trophy girl for bringing her along so I can't think of anything much more awesome than striding down the main walkway with her on my arm. Giggling, Lucy propped her cheek up in one palm. Yeah, she is really beautiful hey. I wish I had her eyes. Crinkling his nose, Naruto looked at the girl. What for? Your eyes suit you just right. Looking up at her fellow blonde, the girl smiled. Well thank you. I'm glad you like them. She then shifted both arms to the tabletop, completely unaware of the generous amount of cleavage that spilled forth from her low-cut top. Desperately trying not to blatantly look, Naruto wished he had a set of sunglasses so he could perv more discreetly. Well Urza said I ain't dressed right and that you could help me buy something nice. I gotta warn you though, if you take as long as Mira-chan, I'm ditching you at the first shop. Snorting, Lucy shook her head. Please, I'm a well-versed girl. I know how much guys like you hate clothes shopping, so I promise it won't take too much time. Nodding, Naruto fixed her with a glare. Alright, I trust you with this. Don't make me lose my faith in you. Sweat dropping at the unusual and misplaced seriousness, Lucy held her hands up disarmingly and nodded. Sure. You have nothing to worry about with me. Alright, let's go. Jumping to her feet, the young blonde female raised a determined fist as Naruto watched her curiously. Pulling himself to his feet, Naruto stuffed his hands in his pockets as Lucy began looking around through the few exits to the room. So where are we going? Grinning, Lucy reached out and grabbed Naruto's sleeve before dragging him through one of the doors. My shopping senses are telling me that this way is good. Blinking in confusion, Naruto just let himself be pulled away. Shopping senses? Standing with his arms held out, Naruto struggled to hold in tears as Lucy fussed over him for the 100th time. Modesty was counted as nothing when it came to shopping, as every single, possible square inch of his body had been thoroughly measured and noted. Places he didn't even know existed apparently had measurements, and as such, the blonde believed his female tormentor and the clerk with her now had a better knowledge of his own body than he did. After all that had been finished, Naruto had been subjected to multiple clothing changes. Any escape he attempted early on had been thwarted by the ruthless duo as they dragged him back for more clothing changes. Towards the end of it, the blonde wondered why he didn't just create 10 clones and have them all dress up with him. That would have cut down time significantly. As it was though, Naruto hoped this was the last one of the day. Most everything else they had tried on him had been stiff, fitted measurements. It might have felt alright when his arms hung by his sides like a pair of wooden boards, but as soon as he tried to move, the fabric bunched up and generally restricted a great amount of movement. No, the blonde was adamant that he got something that at least had some form of elasticity. Eventually, the girls had stumbled over a stylish, evening blue shirt that gave the illusion of being fitted while having the range of a normal shirt. A deep orange, clip-on tie stuck to the front of his shirt that Naruto demanded be included with the package. All things considered, it didn't look as bad as it could have. So that, coupled with a pair of black slacks and simple shoes, seemed to finish off the blonde's attire rather nicely. Looking over himself, Naruto frowned as he twisted to look behind himself. Not enough orange. Rolling her eyes, Lucy gave him a lopsided grin. Well, you can either deal with it, or we can keep looking for you if you want. Realizing the danger, Naruto quickly threw up his hands and plastered a false grin on his face. No, this is just fine then. I love it, honest. Grinning, Lucy grossed her arms. That's what I thought. Alright then, time to pay up. Looking over at his beloved jacket and pants, Naruto sighed and resignedly pulled his ever-present scroll from his pants pocket. Sealing them within, he then tucked the scroll into a pocket inside his shirt. Alright, how much do I owe? Ringing up the amount, the clerk smiled happily at the now rather handsome blonde. That will be 25,000 jewels. Your young lady friend certainly has a knack for spotting bargains. Nodding absently, Naruto pulled out his envelope that contained a bit of his money. He still wasn't all that flash with withdrawing money, so Mira-Jane had taken the liberty to withdraw a considerable amount for his trip. Fishing around through the notes, Naruto pulled out the correct amount and passed it over. Tucking it away, Naruto sighed in relief. It's finally over. Feeling a delicate set of fingers intertwine with his own, Naruto looked down to see Lucy beaming up at him. What are you talking about? Now we gotta go find you some casual clothes. Terror rising up in his chest, Naruto struggled to escape, but the prospect of more shopping strengthened the normally weak girl. Clamping her hand down around Naruto's, she took off like a bullet towards the next shop, Naruto flailing along helplessly behind her. Dropping onto his bed, Naruto breathed a sigh of relief as he finally got away from that shopping demon. Outside of this, she was the gentlest creature in the whole guild, but stick her in a shop and she grew fangs, claws and the strength of 10 men. Rolling over, Naruto looked at the sizable quantity of bags now strewn around. After that first shop, he had been forced to buy swimmers, several sets of casual clothing, even more sets of shoes, and to top it all off, a rubber inner tube for when he went to the beach. He couldn't quite understand her reasoning for that since he could walk on water, but the girl was adamant that he needed it. Looking back up at the ceiling, Naruto released a slow breath and watched as the evening sun reflected off the water and painted the roof in an ever-changing mixture of reds, golds, oranges and yellows. Hearing the door open, Naruto looked down his body to see Kana wandering in with a couple of bags in hand. When she spied Naruto's haul, however, she whistled. "Damn boy, I wasn't expecting you to go so hard first day." Having a look in one of the bags, she raised an eyebrow. "And all clothing?" Shaking his head, Naruto mumbled something before speaking up. "Not by choice. Lucy took me around and used me as a life-size dress-up doll." Chuckling, Kana dropped her own stuff onto her bed. "I wish I could have watched. I bet it would have been hilarious." Naruto crossed his arms with a huff. "Maybe because you didn't have to endure it. What if you were me, huh?" Shrugging, Kana began sorting through her buys. I'm a girl. Not your stereotypical one, but still a girl. I'd have probably enjoyed it a whole lot more than you did." Frowning, Naruto wrinkled his nose. "Well, it still sucked." Rolling her eyes, the brunette wandered over and dropped down beside Naruto. "Well, it's all over now, isn't it? And you even got some classy clothes to boot. So stop grumping and come down for dinner." Now that he thought about it, the blonde was kinda hungry. Pulling himself up, Naruto stretched and looked down at his state of dress. He was still in those first set of clothes Lucy had thrust into his arms. It was good enough. Turning to look at the bags around him, Naruto just raised an eyebrow before kicking them all off onto the floor. Turning back, the blonde was then confronted by a rather surprising sight. Kana was facing away from him as she held a pretty emerald green dress up. The thing that got Naruto, however, was that she had discarded her usual bikini top and let everything hang free. Now, seeming she was facing away from him, he couldn't see anything specific, but the swell of her bust that was visible around her trim back was more than enough to get Naruto's blood pumping. "So you gonna just look, or are you gonna start getting ready too?" Despite having been caught out, Naruto didn't look away. "Well, I'm kinda already ready. So yeah, I think I'll just keep watching." "You think I'd pass up an opportunity like this?" Chuckling, Kana slipped the dress over her head. Pulling it down, she then began wrestling with her pants beneath before slipping them out from under the knee-length outfit. Stepping out, she turned to look back in Naruto and raised an eyebrow when she saw him watching on avidly. "You're just a little perv, aren't you?" Snorting, Naruto shook his head. "You had just as much part in this as I did. You could have gone into the bathroom and changed, but no, you decide to change right in front of me. I claim innocence." Shrugging, Kana threw her pants onto the bed and fluffed her generous amount of hair out with her hands. "Whatever, stud. So you gonna accompany me down to the eating area, or has a girl gotta walk herself there?" Rolling his eyes, Naruto stood up. "Needy woman. Yes, I suppose I can." Chuckling, Kana pulled her heeled shoes on and offered her arm to the blonde. "Guess it's time I pay up and make you look awesome." Grinning, Naruto took the presented limb. "That's what I like to hear." He then frowned and looked at her curiously. "Hang on, are you taller than me in heels?" Shrugging, Kana opened the door for them. "Perhaps. What does it matter?" Grinning, Naruto crossed his fingers. "Nothing." He suddenly went up in a puff of smoke and Kana was left to wave away the excess cloud as she coughed. Once she could see Naruto though, she had to look up at the now taller male. Interesting way to use a transformation. Chuckling, Naruto just let her walk out first. It'd look weird otherwise. Just think though, now you have a big strong arm to hang off in case you slip. Rolling her eyes, the brunette smirked. "You wish." Quirking an eyebrow as he pulled the door closed, Naruto grinned. "Maybe I do." Having met up with the other fairy tale members, Naruto and Kana had instantly been swallowed up into the mayhem. Funnily enough though, Natsu wasn't there to raise the bar of destructiveness and noise to the next level. Wandering up beside Gray, Naruto nudged the scruffy teen. "So where's Natsu? I'd have thought you and him would be brawling on the floor when we arrived." Laughing sharply, Gray raised an eyebrow. "That loser? No, he went and ate some of that lacrima back when he was fighting Jellal. Apparently he didn't realize that eating solid energy would have adverse effects on one's body." Pursing his lips, Naruto thought back to the fight. Was that why he was covered in scales and stuff? Gray shrugged. "I dunno. I wasn't there during that part. Ask Urza about that." Nodding, Naruto went to say something but was cut off as a body literally slammed into his side with considerable force. Struggling to keep his feet, Naruto flapped his arms around for a second before realizing someone was nuzzling his cheek. Kitty. You came back for me." Struggling to see exactly who it was attached to him, Naruto tried to pull the female body off him with little success. Hearing a laugh, Naruto turned to see Urza watching on in amusement. "I see Miliana found you." The face against his finally pulled back to reveal the innocent face of the cat-obsessed teen. Squealing in delight, she wrapped both arms and legs around him as she buried her face into his chest. "I've missed you, kitty. I really have. Don't leave me again." Not quite sure what to do, Naruto looked over at the group helplessly. "Boy, you might as well just let her be. That girl has a dandy affection to anything resembling cats, and those whisker marks of yours are right up her alley, get it?" Raising an eyebrow at the odd voice, Naruto turned to come face to face with one of the most peculiar individuals he had ever had the pleasure of meeting. His entire body was completely made out of rectangles and squares, his clothing stuck fast to his body like it was tattooed on. Even his dark shades were stuck fast over his eyes. What he was wearing, however, was a purple suit with a red tie and white undershirt, looking all the world like a mobster boss. The only part of his attire that wasn't a cube of some form was his white, waist-length scarf and purple mobster hat. Blinking several times, Naruto opened his mouth to say hello but instead found himself saying, "How are you even alive?" Raising one rectangular finger, the man pushed his glasses up his nose and smirked. "I'm a well-rounded man. My magic has a flair to it that helps keep me trendy, get it?" Naruto's eyes thinned as the man flashed him a set of shiny teeth. "Well, I wouldn't really call you rounded." Chuckling, Urza walked up behind the man and placed a familiar hand on his shoulder. "I see you have already met Miliana. Naruto, I would like to introduce you to my dear friend, Wally." Tipping his hat toward the blonde, the newly dubbed Wally extended a hand. Shuffling an arm around the girl still firmly attached to his side, Naruto reached out and took it. "Nice to meet you." Still grinning, Wally pulled his hand back. "Likewise. Now how about we all go get ourselves some dandy food?" Ignoring the speech quirk, Naruto nodded and motioned for him to lead the way. Watching as Urza walked away beside the odd man, Naruto heard Miliana begin purring into his ear. Trying to turn and look at the girl, Naruto raised an eyebrow. "So, are you going to just stay there all night?" Giggling, the girl nodded. "Yup. You're my most favorite. I love you." Sighing, Naruto heard another chuckle beside him as he began walking after the group. "You're lucky in a way. I knew a number of guys who'd love to have her attention lathered on them like that." Turning to face the new person, Naruto was relieved to see a relatively normal, well-tanned individual. Scruffy blonde hair stuck up from his head everywhere, much like Naruto's own, only longer and, if possibly, a little bit more gravity-defying. A single earring hung down from his left ear, the thin silver chain dangling all the way down to his shoulder. The only other defining mark on the teen was a single, stylized S tattooed onto the left side of his chin. Grinning, Naruto stretched out his still free arm. "It's nice to meet someone normal." "Naruto." Chuckling, the blonde man took the hand. "Sho. It's nice to meet you too." His face then seemed to drop a bit and he looked away. About the Tower of Heaven too. I'm really sorry about Jellal. I heard about what you had to deal with." Frowning, Naruto raised an eyebrow. "What's to be sorry about?" Sighing, the teen rubbed his arm. "Well, half the reason everything went so crazy was because me, Wally and Miliana helped build the thing. We might have been tricked, but that doesn't make our wrongs right." Smiling brightly, Naruto reached out and clapped the despondent blonde on his shoulder. "Bah, not to worry. That's in the past and you seem cool now, so why should that affect what I think of you?" Looking up in surprise, Sho furrowed his eyebrows. "You sure?" Grinning, Naruto nodded. "Yup. Everything's alright." Allowing a small smile to reach his mouth, Sho nodded. "Well, thank you." Ignoring the softly mewing girl who had moved from nuzzling his chest up to his neck, Naruto gave him Gai-sensei's patented, good guy pose. "Don't mention it. How about we go get some food now, huh? I'm starving." Nodding a little more animatedly, Sho grinned. "Yeah, I am pretty hungry." Wrapping an arm around his new friend's shoulders, Naruto pulled him in and gently head-butted him. "Awesome." Off to the banquet. Naruto found himself back in that quiet room at the end of the gaming hall with his stomach grumbling loudly. Just as he got his first mouthful, Urza pulled him up and away with her group of close friends. Miliana had once again pounced on him and now was stuck with her rubbing her hair into his nose. Sighing, Naruto considered voicing his complaints but knew he was probably here because of what he spoke with Urza earlier about. Watching as the woman drew their attention, Urza let out a little sigh and began. The reason I brought you all out here was because of what I explained to you earlier. Naruto was kind enough to offer us all a flight back to the guild if need be, so now after a few hours to think I would like to hear your thoughts. Naruto didn't specifically remember promising everyone here a trip back to the guild, but he kept his mouth shut. Sho was the first to speak up, the troubled boy looking to the ground uncertainly. Well, I still don't know what I want to do. Simon deserves to be buried, but at the same time I know he'd want us to enjoy our time together. Wally nodded and he spoke up. Exactly. Simon was a fantastic friend and a dandy example of a man, so he deserves a proper send-off. I would like to stay here a while longer though and celebrate his life with you all. Simon would want us to remember him fondly, so I'd prefer to stay, get it? Urza nodded as Miliana then spoke up from her perch on Naruto's side. Yeah. I love Simon and I know he loved us, so I want to stay and have all this fun for him. That way, when we go back to see him off properly, we can tell him all the stories about what happened here. The girl's eyes began watering as fond memories surfaced. Naruto noticed and wrapped a comforting arm around the girl, to which she instantly leaned into. I miss him so much, but I want to pretend, just this last time, that he is here having fun with us all. Hearing a sniff, Naruto looked over to see the other three members all wiping their eyes gently. While immune to most forms of emotion, Naruto couldn't help but feel his eyes start watering a little in the emotional atmosphere. He'd usually say something about now to try lighten the mood, but the blonde knew that right now, they needed to sort this out. Forcefully sucking the wetness back behind his eyes, Naruto just watched as the group all sniffled together for a few minutes longer. After a while, everyone looked up at Urza let out a soft laugh. Look at us. What a mess we have made. Wiping her eyes, the girl tried her best to hide the redness. I guess we'll stay there then for the remainder of the time. I only ask that you all enjoy yourselves as much as possible for Simon's sake. A small cry of approval sounded out from the group before they all leaned in for a group hug. Naruto unexpectedly found himself dragged in by Miliana too, the girl still not too willing to let go of him. So stuck amongst the circle of bodies, all Naruto could do was look down at them all. They were lucky they all had such good friends to rely on. He just hoped they gathered themselves soon, cause his stomach was literally eating its way into his spine. That's it for the part 10 of this series. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.